The transport vessel glided silently through the asteroid belt, its crystalline hull reflecting pinpricks of distant starlight. Inside, the Galactic Scientific Exploration Team made final preparations for their most ambitious research mission to date. Chief Researcher Zrix adjusted the neural interface of their advanced monitoring equipment, the delicate tendrils of biocircuitry weaving between their multiple sensory appendages. The mission seemed straightforward on the surface. Document and analyze human work practices in one of the most challenging environments known to galactic civilization. Asteroid mining represented the pinnacle of dangerous occupational environments, and humans had somehow carved out a reputation for excellence that defied conventional understanding. Zrix reviewed the preliminary data packets one final time. The research team consisted of 6 carefully selected specialists, each representing a different scientific discipline. There was Polks, the team's environmental systems expert, whose tentacle-like sensory nodes were particularly sensitive to atmospheric variations. Kendra, a biomechanical analyst, sat reviewing holographic projections of human physiological data. The young researcher's 3-fingered hands moved with practiced precision, rotating complex 3-dimensional models that showed human adaptability in extreme conditions. The team's youngest member, a junior researcher named Mira, could barely contain her excitement. This was her first major expedition, and the prospect of studying humans directly filled her with a mixture of scientific curiosity and barely restrained enthusiasm. She had spent years studying human historical records, poring over documentation that seemed to defy logical explanation. Preliminary approach to mining complex Delta 9 commencing, announced the vessel's navigation system. Its voice was a carefully modulated tone, designed to minimize psychological stress during interstellar transit. Zrix's primary sensory cluster focused on the holographic display, showing the asteroid mining complex. It was a marvel of engineering that seemed to exist in direct contradiction to every known principle of structural stability. Massive habitation modules were integrated directly into the asteroid's rocky surface, connected by a network of transparent tunnels and external walkways that appeared to float impossibly against the backdrop of space. The complex had been operational for nearly 2 decades, a testament to human engineering and adaptability. Initial galactic reports suggested the site should have been abandoned within months of its establishment. Instead, it had become one of the most productive mining operations in the outer planetary system. Atmospheric integration sequence beginning, Polks announced, their voice a melodic combination of chemical resonance and linguistic precision. Specialized filtration systems activated, preparing the research team's environment to match the unique conditions of the human-inhabited asteroid. Zrix felt a familiar surge of anticipation. Humans remained an enigma to most galactic civilizations. They were relatively young as a spacefaring species, yet they had accomplished feats that left more established civilizations both impressed and deeply uncomfortable. Their ability to adapt, to transform seemingly impossible challenges into opportunities, challenged fundamental assumptions about intelligent species. The research team's mission was clear: observe, document, and understand. They would spend 6 standard galactic cycles studying human work practices, environmental interactions, and problem-solving methodologies. Every moment would be recorded, analyzed, and catalogued with scientific precision. As the vessel began its final approach, Mira couldn't help but whisper a quiet observation. "They call them Deathworlders," she said, her voice a mixture of wonder and scientific detachment. "But I don't think that term truly captures what makes humans remarkable." Zrix's primary sensory cluster shifted slightly, a gesture that among their species indicated profound contemplation. The human capacity for survival was more than mere biological adaptation. It was something deeper, more complex, a combination of individual creativity, collective intelligence, and an almost inexplicable drive to overcome limitations. The mining complex grew larger in the view screen. External sensors began mapping the intricate details of human infrastructure. Warning indicators that would send most species into immediate retreats seemed to be mere background noise in this environment. Exposed conduits, complex gravitational challenges, radiation levels that would be fatal to most known life forms, all appeared to be nothing more than standard operating conditions. Docking sequence initiated. The navigation system announced. Zrix straightened their research equipment, adjusted the neural interfaces, and prepared to step into a world that promised to challenge everything they thought they understood about intelligent life. The doors of the research vessel began to open. Their mission was about to begin. The airlock cycled with a soft hiss, revealing a world that immediately challenged every preconception the research team had brought with them. Chief Researcher Zrix's sensory clusters went into overdrive, attempting to process the complex environment of the asteroid mining complex. Contrary to their expectations, the interior was not a chaotic mess of industrial machinery and hasty construction. Instead, a carefully orchestrated ecosystem of human activity unfolded before them. Transparent corridors allowed views of multiple work zones, each area a testament to precise organization and unexpected beauty. Kendra's biomechanical sensors began recording everything. Her three-fingered hands moved rapidly across her interface, capturing data points that seemed to contradict every standard galactic workplace safety protocol. Workers moved with a fluid grace that defied the complex gravitational conditions. They navigated narrow walkways, operated massive machinery, and communicated with a level of efficiency that seemed almost telepathic. Incredible, Pulks muttered, their environmental sensors struggling to categorize the adaptive systems around them. The asteroid's interior had been transformed into a living, breathing workspace. Hydroponic gardens were integrated seamlessly with industrial zones, creating micro-environments that served multiple purposes. What appeared to be simple decorative elements were actually sophisticated air purification systems, waste recycling units, and communication nodes. The team's initial briefing hadn't prepared them for this level of integrated design. Solar radiation protection, atmospheric regulation, and structural integrity seemed to be handled through a combination of advanced technology and what could only be described as human intuition. Mira, the youngest researcher, could barely contain her excitement. Her neural interface was working overtime, attempting to process the visual and sensory information flooding her perception. Look at the way they've adapted the work surfaces, she pointed out to Zrix. Each station is customized, but there's an underlying system that allows for instant reconfiguration. A human worker approached the research team. Unlike the alien's expectations of a heavily protected individual, she moved with a casual confidence that spoke of complete mastery of her environment. Her protective gear seemed almost an afterthought, more a tool than a necessity. "Welcome to Delta 9, she said, her voice clear and direct. "I'm Sandra Rodriguez, Lead Operations Coordinator. Our research liaison informed us you'd be observing our operations." Zrix activated the translation matrix, watching as complex linguistic algorithms converted the human speech into comprehensible communication. But something was different. The translation wasn't just about words. It captured nuance, context, a depth of meaning that went beyond simple language conversion. Sandra led them through the complex, each step revealing another layer of human ingenuity. What should have been a harsh, unforgiving environment felt almost organic. Damaged equipment wasn't simply replaced. It was adapted, repurposed, given new life. A broken cooling system had been integrated into an improvised water reclamation unit. A damaged communication array now served as part of an advanced sensor network. Pulks's environmental systems analysis began to show impossible readings. The asteroid's internal environment defied standard geological and atmospheric models. Radiation levels that should have been fatal were mitigated through a combination of advanced shielding and what appeared to be biological adaptation techniques. "How do you manage the constant gravitational fluctuations?" Kendra asked, her scientific curiosity overwhelming her initial professional detachment. Sandra smiled, a uniquely human expression that their cultural databases struggled to fully interpret. "We don't manage them," she explained. "We work with them. Every challenge is an opportunity to learn, to improve." The research team exchanged glances. This was more than a workplace. It was a living system of continuous adaptation and innovation. Mira's neural interface began to overheat from the sheer volume of data. She watched as workers moved between tasks with a synchronicity that suggested something beyond standard communication protocols. A worker would anticipate a need before it was verbalized. A tool would be passed before a request was made. Complex machinery would be adjusted with a precision that suggested a form of collective intelligence. Zrix realized they were witnessing something profound. This wasn't just about survival in a challenging environment. This was a fundamental reimagining of how intelligent species could interact with their surroundings. As they moved deeper into the complex, the research team's initial scientific detachment began to transform. What had started as a clinical observation was becoming something more. A journey of discovery that challenged everything they thought they understood about adaptation, intelligence, and potential. The mission had only just begun, but already the Galactic Scientific Exploration Team knew their report would change everything. The first warning came as a subtle vibration. Most species would have dismissed it as inconsequential, but not the humans of Delta 9 Mining Complex. Sandra Rodriguez's posture changed instantly, a transformation from casual coordinator to precision-focused leader. Preliminary stress indicators are showing anomalies in Sector 7, she announced, her voice cutting through the ambient noise of the mining operations. The research team watched in fascination as the human workforce began to move with an almost prescient coordination. Zrix's sensory cluster detected the first signs of a potential catastrophic system failure. Gravitational stabilizers were showing critical stress points that should have triggered immediate evacuation protocols. Yet the human workers remained calm, their movements deliberate and calculated. Pulx's environmental monitoring systems began to flash urgent warnings. Radiation levels were spiking, structural integrity was compromising, and the asteroid's internal systems were rapidly approaching a critical breakdown point. Any other known galactic species would have abandoned the complex within microseconds. "This is impossible," Kendra muttered, her biomechanical analysis unable to comprehend the developing scenario. The humans weren't just responding to the crisis. They seemed to be anticipating it, moving with a fluidity that suggested they had already mapped out multiple potential solutions. Sandra activated a complex communication network. Hand signals, subtle head movements, and what appeared to be an almost telepathic understanding passed between the workers. Mira's research interface struggled to capture the intricate communication patterns. "Gravitational stabilization compromised in outer ring," a worker called out. Instead of panic, the response was immediate and coordinated. Workers began to move specialized equipment, reinforcing critical structural points with a precision that defied standard engineering protocols. Zrix realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. This wasn't just crisis management. It was a collective problem-solving approach that transformed potential catastrophe into an opportunity for innovation. The research team's monitoring equipment began to overload. Radiation levels continued to spike, structural stress points were multiplying, and the entire asteroid mining complex should have been moments away from complete destruction. Yet the humans moved with an almost supernatural calm. Sandra approached a critical junction point, her movements a blend of technical expertise and intuitive understanding. She wasn't just reading equipment, she was communicating with the complex itself, understanding its stress points, its potential failure modes. "Redirecting secondary power systems," she announced. "Initiating adaptive structural reinforcement." Mira's research interface captured something unprecedented. The humans weren't fighting against the complex's failing systems. They were working with them. Each challenge was seen not as a threat, but as a problem to be solved, an opportunity to learn and improve. Pulx watched in absolute amazement as workers began to modify equipment on the fly. A damaged radiation shield was quickly repurposed into a structural support system. A failing communication array became part of an impromptu cooling mechanism. Nothing was wasted. Everything was an opportunity. The research team's initial scientific detachment began to crumble. This was more than a workplace. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of human innovation. Zrix's primary sensory cluster struggled to process the unfolding events. Conventional galactic understanding suggested this scenario would result in total system failure. Instead, the humans were systematically transforming a potential catastrophe into a moment of collective problem-solving. Structural integrity at 62% and holding, a worker called out. In any other context, this would have been cause for extreme concern. Here, it sounded like a routine status update. Kendra's biomechanical analysis began to reveal something profound. The workers weren't just responding individually. They were operating as a single, adaptive organism. Communication wasn't just about verbal or digital exchanges. It was a complex dance of anticipation, understanding, and collective action. As the crisis continued to develop, the research team found themselves witnessing something that challenged every fundamental assumption about intelligent species, workplace dynamics, and survival. The asteroid mining complex wasn't just surviving. It was thriving. Sandra caught Zrix's eye, a slight smile indicating she was well aware of the researchers' growing understanding. Every challenge, she said simply, is an opportunity to learn. In that moment, the Galactic Scientific Exploration Team understood they were witnessing something far more significant than a workplace crisis. This was a fundamental demonstration of human potential, a species that didn't just survive challenges, but transformed them into moments of growth and innovation. The crisis was far from over, but for the humans of Delta 9, it was just another day at work. The crisis transformed into a ballet of human innovation that defied every logical prediction. Sandra Rodriguez moved through the compromise system with a grace that seemed to blend engineering expertise, intuitive understanding, and pure creative problem-solving. Adaptive reconfiguration initiated, she called out, her voice calm despite the complex's continuing structural challenges. The research team watched in absolute marvel as workers began to reshape their environment in real time. Kendra's biomechanical sensors worked overtime, capturing data points that seemed to defy fundamental laws of engineering and adaptation. A damaged cooling system was being systematically transformed. What should have been a critical failure became an opportunity for radical redesign. Observe the molecular-level adaptation, Polks whispered to Mira, their sensory nodes vibrating with scientific excitement. A worker was using a combination of advanced tools and what appeared to be pure intuition to restructure a failing power conduit. Materials were being manipulated, redirected, and repurposed with a fluidity that suggested a deeper understanding of their environment. Zrix noticed something even more profound. This wasn't just about solving an immediate problem. The humans were learning from the crisis, creating systems that were more robust, more adaptable than the original design. Each challenge was a chance to improve, to evolve. Sandra approached a critically damaged junction point. The alien researchers expected a complex technical intervention. Instead, she did something entirely unexpected. She reached into a nearby supply container and pulled out what appeared to be emergency ration packaging, standard protective sealant, and a multi-tool. Improvisation is the key to survival, she explained, catching the bewildered look from the research team. In moments, she had created a temporary solution that not only stabilized the failing system, but actually improved its overall functionality. Mira's research interface began to overheat from the sheer volume of unprecedented data. The humans weren't just responding to the crisis. They were transforming it. A damaged communication array became part of an advanced sensor network. A compromised radiation shield was repurposed into a structural support mechanism. Gravitational stabilization at 73% and increasing, a worker called out. In any other context, this would have been cause for extreme concern. Here, it sounded like a routine status update. Polks's environmental analysis revealed something extraordinary. The humans were essentially treating the entire mining complex as a living, breathing organism. Each challenge was an opportunity for growth, for improvement. They didn't see problems. They saw potential. The research team's initial scientific detachment completely dissolved. This was more than workplace efficiency. This was a fundamental approach to existence that challenged every known galactic understanding of adaptation and survival. Kendra watched as workers moved between tasks with a synchronicity that suggested something beyond standard communication protocols. A tool would be passed before a request was made. A potential system failure would be anticipated and addressed before it could fully develop. "How do you do this?" Mira blurted out, her scientific curiosity overwhelming her professional training. Sandra just smiled, a uniquely human expression that their cultural databases struggled to fully interpret. "We don't just solve problems," Sandra explained. "We see them as conversations with our environment. Every challenge is a chance to understand something new." Zrix's primary sensory cluster began to understand something profound. This wasn't just about technical skill or workplace efficiency. This was a fundamental approach to existence, a way of seeing the universe as a dynamic, constantly changing system to be understood and worked with, not fought against. The damaged sections of the mining complex began to transform. What should have been a catastrophic failure became a moment of collective innovation. Workers moved with a precision that suggested they were part of a larger collective intelligence. "Structural reconfiguration complete," another worker announced. But it wasn't just a repair. The complex had been fundamentally improved, its systems more robust, more adaptive than before. As the crisis continued to unfold, the Galactic Scientific Exploration Team realized they were witnessing something far more significant than a workplace emergency. This was a fundamental demonstration of human potential, a species that didn't just survive challenges, but transformed them into moments of growth and understanding. Sandra caught Zrix's eye, a knowing look indicating she was fully aware of the researchers' growing comprehension. "In our world," she said simply, "every limitation is just an invitation to create something better." The mining complex continued to hum with activity, a testament to human resilience, creativity, and an unbreakable spirit of innovation. The research team's temporary observation quarters buzzed with an electric tension of intellectual revelation. Zrix sat motionless, primary sensory clusters processing the unprecedented data that they had collected during the mining complex's crisis response. Mira paced the room, her neural interface still overwhelmed by the day's observations. "We've been approaching everything wrong," she muttered, her words barely audible but charged with profound realization. The young researcher's entire scientific worldview was crumbling and reconstructing itself in real time. Pulx's environmental analysis systems had been working overtime, generating complex holographic projections that filled the room with intricate data patterns. Each visualization told a story far more complex than simple workplace efficiency. It was a complete reimagining of how intelligent species could interact with their environment. "Our galactic research models are fundamentally limited," Kendra observed, her three-fingered hands manipulating complex data streams. The biomechanical analyst had been particularly affected by the human's adaptive capabilities. What should have been a catastrophic system failure had become a moment of collective innovation. Zrix activated a comprehensive analysis interface. The data challenged every established scientific understanding of workplace dynamics, species adaptation, and problem-solving methodologies. Humans didn't just respond to challenges. They transformed them into opportunities for growth and learning. The research team's preliminary report was taking shape, but words seemed inadequate to capture what they had witnessed. How could they explain a species that saw limitations not as barriers, but as invitations to create something entirely new? "It's not just about survival," Mira explained, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and philosophical wonder. "They've developed a fundamental approach to existence that treats every challenge as a collaborative conversation with their environment." Pulx's sensory nodes vibrated with scientific excitement. The environmental systems analysis revealed layers of complexity that defied standard galactic research protocols. The humans had created an ecosystem that was simultaneously a workplace, a learning environment, and a living, breathing organism. Zrix recalled Sandra's words, "Every limitation is just an invitation to create something better." It wasn't just a casual statement. It was a profound philosophy of existence that challenged fundamental assumptions about intelligence, adaptation, and potential. The data visualizations began to tell a story far more complex than simple workplace efficiency. Each human worker moved with an intuitive understanding that suggested a form of collective intelligence beyond traditional communication protocols. Tools were anticipated before requests were made. Potential system failures were addressed before they could fully develop. We need to completely restructure our understanding of intelligent species, Kendra insisted. Her biomechanical analysis had revealed something extraordinary. The humans weren't just solving problems. They were engaged in a continuous process of creation and adaptation. Mira pulled up a comprehensive visualization of the mining complex's crisis response. What should have been a catastrophic failure had become a moment of collective innovation. Workers moved with a precision that suggested they were part of a larger collective intelligence. Polks's environmental systems began generating predictive models based on human behavior. The results were impossible by traditional scientific standards. Humans seemed to operate on a principle of continuous adaptation that transformed challenges into opportunities for growth. It's a fundamental difference in perception, Zrix observed, their primary sensory cluster processing the profound implications. Where most galactic species saw obstacles, humans saw potential. Where others would retreat, humans would innovate. The research team's communication devices suddenly came alive with an incoming transmission from their home institution. The preliminary data they had sent had created a storm of scientific controversy. Established researchers were challenging their observations, claiming they must have misinterpreted the data. Mira laughed, a uniquely human expression she had learned during their short time on the mining complex. They haven't seen what we've seen, she said. The young researcher understood now that true scientific discovery wasn't about confirming existing models, but about being willing to completely reimagine them. Zrix realized they were at the precipice of a fundamental scientific breakthrough. This was more than a study of a workplace or a species. This was a complete reimagining of what intelligence could mean. As the holographic projections continued to dance around them, filled with complex data points and unprecedented insights, the research team understood that their mission had become something far more significant than a simple observational study. They were witnessing the potential future of intelligent life itself. The room fell silent, each researcher lost in the profound implications of their discovery. Somewhere in the mining complex, life continued, humans transforming challenges into opportunities, one moment at a time. The interview room was unlike anything the research team had expected. Large windows overlooked the mining complex, allowing natural light to flood the space. Sandra Rodriguez sat across from them, her posture relaxed yet alert, embodying the adaptive nature they had observed throughout their study. "You've been watching us very carefully," Sandra began, a knowing smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I can see the questions building up behind your eyes." Zrix's primary sensory cluster adjusted, processing the human's direct communication style. Mira leaned forward, her scientific curiosity barely contained. "We're trying to understand," she admitted. "Your approach to challenges defies every standard galactic research model we've ever encountered." Sandra chuckled, a sound that seemed to contain multiple layers of meaning. "Understanding isn't about fitting everything into existing models," she explained. "It's about being willing to expand those models." Polks's environmental analysis systems were working overtime, capturing every nuance of the conversation. The human before them wasn't just answering questions, she was teaching a fundamentally different way of perceiving existence. "Our planet," Sandra continued, "is what you might call a challenging environment. Extreme weather, limited resources, constant environmental changes. Survival wasn't just about strength, it was about adaptability, creativity, and collective problem-solving." Kendra's biomechanical sensors detected subtle changes in Sandra's physiological responses. Each word was more than just communication. It was a lived philosophy. "You mean evolution?" Mira asked, her translation matrix struggling to capture the full depth of the concept. Sandra shook her head. Not exactly. Evolution suggests a passive process. What humans developed was an active approach to adaptation. Every challenge became an opportunity to learn, to grow, to create something new. The research team exchanged glances. This was more than a workplace philosophy. This was a fundamental approach to existence. Take our mining complex. Sandra gestured to the window. Most species would see limitations, harsh environment, complex gravitational challenges, constant system stress. We see potential. Each problem is a conversation waiting to happen. Zrix's sensory cluster captured something profound. The humans weren't just surviving. They were continuously creating, continuously evolving. But how do you manage the psychological toll? Polks asked. The environmental expert couldn't comprehend how a species could maintain such a positive approach to constant challenges. Sandra's laugh was unexpected. Psychological toll. We don't see it that way. Every challenge is a chance to become something more. Failure isn't an endpoint. It's just valuable information. The room fell silent as the research team processed her words. This was a completely different understanding of challenge, of potential, of existence itself. Our early explorers understood something fundamental. Sandra explained. On our planet, the ones who survived weren't the strongest. They were the most adaptable, the most creative, the ones who could look at a problem and see an opportunity. Mira's neural interface was working overtime, capturing every nuance of the conversation. It sounds exhausting, she observed. It's energizing, Sandra corrected. Imagine a species that doesn't run from challenges, but runs toward them. That doesn't see limitations, but sees potential. Kendra's biomechanical analysis revealed something extraordinary. Sandra wasn't just describing a philosophy. She was embodying it. Her physiological responses suggested a complete integration of this approach to life. We teach this from childhood, Sandra continued. Not as a skill, but as a way of understanding the world. Every child learns that problems are just unfinished solutions. Every setback is a setup for a breakthrough. Zrix realized they were witnessing something far more significant than a workplace interview. This was a masterclass in a completely different approach to intelligence, to existence. The universe is complex, Sandra said, her voice taking on an almost philosophical tone. Most species try to simplify it, to control it. We've learned to dance with its complexity. The research team sat in stunned silence. What they had thought was a simple study of a mining operation had become a profound exploration of a fundamentally different way of understanding existence. As the interview concluded, Sandra left them with a final observation. We don't solve problems, she said. We create possibilities. Outside the window, the mining complex continued its intricate dance of innovation and adaptation, a living testament to human potential. The catastrophe arrived without warning. Deep space sensors detected a massive gravitational anomaly approaching the mining complex, a phenomenon that would have triggered immediate evacuation for any other known galactic species. Sandra Rodriguez's communication network came alive with a precision that defied conventional understanding. Workers began moving with a synchronicity that suggested something far beyond standard communication protocols. Zrix and the research team watched in absolute amazement as the human workforce transformed from individual workers to a single adaptive organism. The gravitational anomaly was approaching with devastating potential, a cascading quantum disruption that should have meant certain destruction. Quantum stabilization sequence initiated, Sandra announced, her voice calm despite the imminent threat. The research team's monitoring equipment began to overload, unable to process the complexity of the human response. Polks's environmental systems struggled to categorize what was happening. Workers were not just responding to the threat. They were actively reshaping their environment to meet the challenge. Entire sections of the mining complex began to reconfigure adaptive systems, creating new structural integrity points that defied standard engineering principles. Kendra's biomechanical sensors captured something unprecedented. The humans were essentially treating the entire complex as a living, breathing organism. Each worker moved with an intuitive understanding that suggested a form of collective intelligence beyond any known galactic model. Gravitational stress points identified. A worker called out. Instead of panic, there was a sense of focused determination. Tools were passed before requests were made. Potential system failures were anticipated and addressed before they could fully develop. The quantum anomaly drew closer. Most species would have been paralyzed by the approaching destruction. The humans of Delta 9 Mining Complex saw an opportunity for innovation. Mira's research interface began to overheat from the sheer volume of unprecedented data. The workers weren't just trying to survive. They were actively engaging with the quantum disruption, attempting to understand and potentially redirect its energy. Sandra moved between critical system points, her movements a blend of technical expertise and intuitive understanding. She wasn't just reading equipment, she was communicating with the complex itself, understanding its stress points, its potential transformation modes. Adaptive resonance field preparing, she announced. The research team watched in absolute marvel as the mining complex began to change. Structural elements shifted, energy systems reconfigured, communication networks expanded and contracted in real time. Zrix's primary sensory cluster struggled to process the unfolding events. Conventional galactic understanding suggested this scenario would result in total system destruction. Instead, the humans were systematically transforming a potential cosmic catastrophe into a moment of collective problem-solving. The quantum anomaly was now visible through the complex's external sensors, a massive gravitational distortion that should have meant instant annihilation. Yet the human workers continued their precise, coordinated response. Quantum interference patterns stabilizing. A worker called out. The words should have been impossible. No known species could actively engage with such a massive gravitational disruption. Pulx's environmental analysis revealed something extraordinary. The humans were essentially creating a dynamic shield, not by blocking the anomaly, but by understanding its fundamental nature and working with its energy patterns. Redirecting quantum stress. Sandra's voice cut through the complex's communication network, transforming disruption into potential energy. The research team watched in absolute astonishment. The quantum anomaly wasn't being stopped. It was being understood, redirected, transformed into something constructive. Kendra's biomechanical sensors detected something profound. The workers weren't just responding individually. They were operating as a single adaptive organism. Communication wasn't just about verbal or digital exchanges. It was a complex dance of anticipation, understanding, and collective action. The minutes stretched, each moment a testament to human innovation. The quantum anomaly that should have destroyed everything was being systematically understood, engaged with, transformed. Quantum disruption pattern neutralized, Sandra announced. But it wasn't just neutralization. The complex had been fundamentally improved, its systems more robust, more adaptive than before. Zrix realized they were witnessing something far more significant than a workplace emergency. This was a fundamental demonstration of human potential. A species that didn't just survive cosmic challenges, but transformed them into moments of growth and understanding. As the quantum anomaly dissipated, the mining complex continued to hum with activity. What should have been a moment of total destruction had become another opportunity for innovation. Sandra caught Zrix's eye, a knowing look indicating she was fully aware of the researcher's growing comprehension. In our universe, she said simply, every challenge is just an invitation to create something extraordinary. The Galactic Research Institute's central chamber fell silent as Zrix began presenting their comprehensive report. Holographic projections danced around the research team, displaying unprecedented data that challenged every established scientific understanding of intelligent life. Our mission was intended to be a simple observational study. Zrix began, primary sensory clusters pulsing with nervous energy. What we discovered was nothing short of a fundamental reimagining of potential. Mira stood beside the chief researcher, her neural interface displaying complex data visualizations that seemed to breathe with living complexity. The young researcher had transformed from a junior team member to a key witness of a scientific revolution. The assembled researchers represented the most prestigious scientific minds from across known galactic civilizations. They had come expecting a routine presentation. Instead, they were about to have their entire understanding of intelligence challenged. Kendra's biomechanical analysis formed the core of their presentation. Each visualization told a story of adaptive capability that defied conventional models. The humans of the Delta 9 mining complex weren't just surviving. They were continuously creating, continuously evolving. Traditional research models suggest that intelligence is about predictability. Polks explained, environmental systems projections filling the chamber with intricate data patterns. What we witnessed is something entirely different. Intelligence, as demonstrated by humans, is about continuous adaptation. The room buzzed with a mixture of skepticism and growing fascination. The data was impossible to ignore, yet it challenged everything these researchers had built their careers upon. Zrix projected the quantum anomaly sequence, the moment that had become the ultimate demonstration of human capability. Where any other species would have been destroyed, the humans had transformed a potential catastrophe into an opportunity for growth. They don't just solve problems, Mira interjected, her voice filled with the passion of scientific discovery. They create possibilities. Every challenge is seen as an invitation to understand something new. The holographic projections began to tell a story far more complex than simple workplace efficiency. Each human worker moved with an intuitive understanding that suggested a form of collective intelligence beyond traditional communication protocols. We are recommending a complete restructuring of our understanding of intelligent species, Zrix declared. The statement hung in the air, its implications resonating through the chamber. Senior researchers began to raise objections. Questions flew like rapid-fire energy bursts. How could such a young species demonstrate such advanced adaptive capabilities? What mechanisms allowed for such collective problem-solving? Sandra Rodriguez appeared on the holographic display, a recording from their final interview. We don't see limitations, her image explained. We see unfinished solutions. Polks's environmental analysis provided context. The human's approach wasn't just a workplace strategy. It was a fundamental philosophy of existence, a way of engaging with the universe that transformed challenges into opportunities. The research team's comprehensive report began to circulate through galactic research networks. It wasn't just a scientific document. It was a potential turning point in understanding intelligence itself. This goes beyond technological capability, Kendra explained. This is about a fundamental approach to existence. Humans don't just adapt to their environment. They engage with it as a collaborative partner. Mira's neural interface generated predictive models based on human behavior. The results were revolutionary. Species that approached challenges with similar adaptive thinking could potentially solve problems that had challenged galactic civilizations for millennia. The chamber grew quiet as the implications sank in. This was more than a research report. This was a window into a completely different way of understanding potential, of engaging with the universe. We are recommending immediate comprehensive studies, Zrix concluded, not as observers, but as students. The final holographic projection showed the Delta 9 mining complex, a living testament to human potential. Workers moving with precision, transforming challenges into opportunities, creating possibilities where others would see only obstacles. Senior researchers began intense discussions. Some were skeptical, others were excited. But none could ignore the profound data before them. As the presentation concluded, Zrix realized they had done more than complete a research mission. They had witnessed the potential future of intelligent life, a future where challenges were not barriers, but invitations to create something extraordinary. Sandra's final words from their interview echoed through the chamber. The universe is complex. Most species try to simplify it, to control it. We've learned to dance with its complexity. The scientific community would never be the same again.